Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to NAMI Vermont's 1-hour Lunch and Learn event. My name is Christina Petter, and I am the Program Coordinator at the National Alliance on Mental Illness of Vermont. NAMI Vermont is the state chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are a statewide, nonprofit, grassroots volunteer organization comprised of people who live with a mental health condition, family members, and advocates. As our mission, we provide support groups, educational opportunities, and we advocate for an improved mental health system of care. We're very excited to welcome Bryn Loftness, who is a researcher and founder of Biobe, who will be presenting From Science to Support, turning research into everyday emotional wellness tools. Bryn will share how Biobe transforms child mental health research into everyday tools for families and pediatric providers. She'll introduce Sprout Foundations, demonstrate several strategies in action, and guide participants through Biobe's free online framework for selecting effective approaches to common emotional and behavioral challenges. The session will feature real-world examples from families and clinicians, along with resources for continued learning. If you have questions, please type them in the chat. We kindly ask that you remain on mute unless it's time for open discussion. This session is being recorded. If you need to use closed captioning, click on the icon at the bottom of your screen. We would also appreciate your feedback and ask that you complete the evaluation form that will pop up once you close the call. Links will be shared in the chat on information that Bryn will cover, and we will follow up with all the links and documents that will be shared today. Every first Wednesday through June, we will have a new Lunch and Learn topic. If you haven't already done so, please register for our upcoming sessions that each have a unique Zoom link. NAMI Vermont is a safe and supportive space where we can have open and honest conversations about mental health. Please remember to take care of yourself and practice good self-care. If at any point you need support, you can call 988 for immediate help. And now I would like to introduce Bryn. Bryn Loftness is a researcher, founder, and PhD candidate in complex systems and data science at the University of Vermont, where she focuses on pediatric mental health and biobehavioral sensing. She co-founded Biobe, the team behind Sprout Foundations, a 50-strategy toolkit that helps families strengthen children's emotional regulation. A TEDx speaker known for making complex science accessible, Bryn works at the intersection of technology, psychology, and community engagement, including partnerships with NAMI Vermont to support mental health education in schools. Her work has been supported by the National Science Foundation and several Vermont innovation programs, all fueling her mission to make evidence-based mental health tools practical and approachable. So without further ado, I give you Bryn Loftness.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Christina. I'm so happy to be here today and really look forward to chatting with you all. I really look forward to saving any kind of Q&A towards the end, but if you do have any conceptual questions that you feel like you really want to go over or need clarification on, you can feel free to put those in the chat and we can try to get them throughout the presentation, but we'll definitely have time at the end as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen quickly, and then we're going to jump right into it. If I could get just someone to let me know when we're rocking and rolling through a thumbs up. Excellent. Okay. So this is NAMI Lunch and Learn, as Christina introduced, and this is going to be From Science to Support, turning research into everyday emotional wellness tools. My name is Bryn Loftness, and I am a doctoral researcher at University of Vermont, and also the co-founder of Biobe, as Christina mentioned. As we get going into this today, as was said in my introduction, but I want to make very clear, there is a conflict of interest where I am a shareholder in my company, Biobe, as well as my co-founders. We're licensing this IP we've developed at the universities we're associated with because we truly believe it's the best way to reach the maximal amount of people. We are funded by both the NIH and NSF in that goal. So moving forward from there, a little bit about me. I think it's fun to say role titles, but it's really nice to share what do I do on the day-to-day as an introduction point. And so a few of the topics that I really find myself most focused on center around science communication, doing what I'm doing here today, which is sharing more about what we do in the research labs and try and translate out of the research labs, but also a lot with wearables, both in my everyday life. I wear wearables. If you're all familiar with wearables, a phone can be considered a wearable, an Aura ring can be considered a wearable. There are many, many, many different formats. Ooh, my apologies, getting a phone call. And even different ways that we can measure our bodies, measure the way we're interacting with others. There are many ways that we can characterize on body sensors and off body sensors. And that's really what I spend my day focusing on. But beyond kind of the fancy stuff, I always like to really share this photo along with these topics. I've been fascinated with computers and how we can use technology to better understand health in our behavior and organizing information for as long as I can remember. And I've really tried to continue that passion that I've had since I was a child into my work that I do today, well over a few decades later. Um, Going into the next step, um, a little bit about our work and how we use wearables specifically to help solve problems. The problem that my team is really, really passionate about. We spend a lot of time focused on it, and it's improving emotional wellness in young children. We understand there are significant gaps within the screening and intervention process in modern day healthcare. A lot of times we're reliant on kind of a wait and see approach for early signs of mental health conditions in young children. Our team really believes we can do better. And we're focused on not only studying how we can do better, but building real tools that individuals like parents and educators and clinicians could use today to try and improve that emotional well-being. We know that intervention in early childhood leads us to the longest chance or the highest chance for long-term success. And that's really what we're after. And so if you can kind of think of the last slide as what are the tools we use and that I use, this is the problem space that we're really using those tools for. It's trying to tackle problems within screening and intervention. To give you a feel of where my team is at, we're up here in Vermont at the Vermont Hub. However, my team is also co-located down at Wake Forest, and we have a lot of partners at a variety of clinics down in the southern region, but also in the Midwest, which allows us through our research partnerships and through our new partnerships with Biobe to reach a lot of families. And so we didn't want to just continue to use those amazing research sites as a way to test bed new ideas. We also wanted to make sure we were deploying those ideas in a way that allowed families after those research trials to access the same tools. And so that's a little bit about the tools we use, the problems we're trying to solve, but also where we're at and how we're trying to reach people. So going into the learning objectives for this Lunch and Learn, the whole reason why we're here today, these exact learning objectives were shared in the sign up. And so hopefully these look a little bit familiar, but I'm a scientist and I really like to know what I'm going to be learning in a presentation. And so this is exactly what you can expect from this chat today. We're going to be structuring it in each of these different components. And so if at any point you're wondering what we're going over or what might happen next, you can go back to the flyer and even see the learning objectives there. So we're going to jump right into the first bit here, which is describing how our team's research, the research that we've been doing in labs here at UVM, over at University of Michigan, and down at Wake Forest have spurred really interesting ideas and really interesting translational projects that have brought new practical family-friendly tools that are being used today. Okay. So I don't want anyone to get daunted here. I want to just kind of tell you a story, and I'm a really visual person. And so I'm going to be pointing to different sections of this here. But no, you don't have to dive into any specific parts. But to really understand where we're going next and what we have now and to talk about our tools now, I thought it'd be nice to share what our team has been doing for the last decade. And really that started back around 2011 when two of our co-founders for Biobe and two of my academic advisors for my PhD program, Ryan and Ellen McGinnis, who you'll see in the lower left corner, they were really curious about how we could do better in screening of early childhood mental health. Typically, how it's done in pediatric practice is we wait until annual well visits, which happen one time a year, can take about 15 to 20 minutes, and have a very limited amount of time for direct personalized follow-up following screening. So let's say you do the 17-item questionnaire. Even if that's positive, you may be on a wait list for quite some time. There are amazing programs like NAMI that allow peer education and access to different tools. However, if you're looking for personalized professional care, there can sometimes be significant wait lists, and also triaging what kind of support you need and what is your impairment level can sometimes be a guessing game, especially when a kiddo is prior to the age of 10 and are not able to articulate their abstract emotions. They're not able to tell us, hey, I'm 8 years old and I've been feeling more lethargic lately. We just can't expect that from them. And so identifying more ways through technology that we can give them voice and listen to their bodies, that was really our team's intention. And so, one approach that our team has been exploring is by using brief developmental tasks like giving a speech or playing with bubbles or walking into a new space. And we measure how their heart rate changes, or we measure how, if, for example, right now, some of you might remember back to a time you've given a speech and your hands have gotten kind of clammy or you've gotten kind of sweaty. We can measure that response with something called galvanic skin response. It's essentially the conductance of your skin. And so by looking at how is their cardiac response changing, how clammy are they getting, how much are they fidgeting, how much are they moving away from threats, in just a very brief amount of time, 5 to 10 minutes, we can get really interesting signals that can give us more complementary signal to what we might already be getting from their parent. So I'll kind of dive into just one of these plots here to give an example of what that looks like. In a typical sample, and this was one of our most recent studies, we had 100 kiddos that we recruited at University of Vermont. And 30 of those kiddos, this green bar here, was diagnosed with either anxiety, depression, or ADHD, had one of the three diagnoses, 30 of the 100. In that same sample, we had the parents do a typical questionnaire, the same kind of questionnaire that you might see in a pediatric office, like the pediatric symptom checklist. This one was the CBCL. And unfortunately, in this sample, the parents were only able to identify about 1/3 of those children. And that is really consistent with what you might see actually in other studies or other real world contexts as well. Caregivers are absolutely the expert on their child. However, it's really hard to be a mind reader. It's actually impossible. And so there are a lot of children that go missed or overlooked just because we don't quite have a way to understand that they might be struggling yet. We haven't found a way to observe that symptomology. However, our team, by using these brief developmental tasks and understanding more of that child's body and pairing that with that parent, we're able to identify many more of those children. That's that purple bar here. And so that kind of gives you an example of what's the kind of projects my team has been working on since 2011 in multiple different samples at different universities. And then when I came in 2021, collecting another sample up here at University of Vermont. And so we are going to go into the next stage here where you might be asking, okay, what's the next step? Where does that go next? If you're saying we can increase sensitivity of early childhood mental health screening, how can we get that into clinical care? And maybe that's not your question, but that was my question. And so what I started doing in 2022 was we started reaching out to more individuals in the actual mental health screening and intervention space. We were already doing this in research contexts, but what I was curious about was really understanding what are the problems that are happening today that maybe aren't being reflected in academic papers and are being reflected in people's lived experience. NAMI is a really great example of another organization really rooted in lived experience. Understanding people's pain points, hearing what has happened to them helps us build empathy, but it also helps us find solutions, often a lot faster than if we waited for many years to understand through many research trials what a solution might be. We can do it hand in hand. And so that's what our team tried to do, a lot more translational research. And so we recruited hundreds of parents and pediatricians and clinical providers to just chat with us. I traveled the country for approximately 2 years, reaching out directly to pediatricians and parents where they're actively living, asking them. You can see in purple some of these quotes here are direct quotes from parents or pediatricians we talk to, where we ask them, so we have a technology that we're developing that can improve screening of early childhood mental health. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about screening? And what we kept hearing, and maybe this is a surprise for some and maybe not others, but what we kept hearing was, wow, a new screener could be amazing. That could be really helpful. But honestly, we need tools today. We need personalized tools to go home with. I don't want to give a diagnosis. This is on the side of a clinician or a provider. I don't want to give a diagnosis or even sometimes do the screening if I don't have something tailored I can give them that day, something that can help build skills, especially because for early childhood mental health for kids under 10, the next step often isn't medication. It's often family support groups, direct training, parent training, as well as child training. It's a lot of tool building. And so how can we do some of that tailored tool building right away is essentially the question we started getting at. So after we talked to hundreds of pediatricians and parents, we went back to our research labs and we recruited some more pediatricians and parents to ask them more targeted questions. We asked them directly, what do you want to know following a screening? Do you want to know typical versus atypical? Or do you just want strategies based on that screening? And we started digging deeper and deeper. At the same time, we continued to progress our research, but also the company aspect of things, where we're trying to understand more of not only how do we get these research projects going, but how do we make sure the tools we're building we could release right away in tandem as well. So at this point, it's been about 13 years. We've been studying this screening technology. We've done it on approximately 4 different cohorts. We have well over a dozen publications, and we're really understanding what we need to do for the regulatory pipeline. Something like an eye exam or an ear exam, or for us, a new type of behavioral health exam, of course, is going to have to go through the FDA to make sure it's robustly evaluated. And so our team had to be considering that and considering what that pathway was going to look like. But also, we continue to explore what are ways that we could help now. If a new screening technology is on the horizon, but we know that might take a while, what can we build today? And so that's what brought us to Sprout. As we continue to recruit those parents and clinicians, understand more about screening, understand more about how they want to be delivered their results, we started testing how providing coping skills tailored to their specific challenges helped them find tools that day. We recruited specifically parents and caregivers of children with elevated screening scores and gave them Sprout. And we were really excited to see they were finding strategies, not only that they said they would be willing to try generally, but strategies that they felt they could immediately implement. Because that was really the question we were trying to get at. Could we not only provide tools, but provide actionable tools, tools that they felt comfortable with, confident in? That was really what we were trying to get at. We've since launched Sprout, which has been a really exciting journey, not only in the research base, continuing to study it and recruit samples, but also releasing it as something that parents and caregivers can buy at a low cost today, something clinics can buy at a low cost to provide to those parents in their care. And this has been a really exciting journey, partnering with different clinics, doing different workshops, identifying different grant opportunities to make sure that not only are we progressing the science, but also we're progressing the tools that everyday individuals can use outside of the scientific ecosystem. And so now we're going to go into the next learning objective. And I'll just remind you, that was me kind of sharing, how did we get to this stage? How did we get to Sprout? How did we get from putting wearables on kiddos to try and give them voice in the screening process to making a toolkit that someone could buy today? How did we get here? So that's really where we're at now. But now let's talk a little bit more about how it might support or how we've seen it support in different settings. Something one of my co-founders, Ellen McGinnis, a child psychologist, often said when she was working in a lot of patient-facing care with families and children was that there would be times in her sessions when she wanted to provide specific feedback, or she wanted to provide specific themes, or she wanted to provide specific tools or concepts or learnings to bridge off of what they had been going over in session. However, when she said, here is this book or here is this chapter, a parent would often say back to her, the caregiver would say back to her, okay, this is amazing. What page? And this is, I think, a really powerful story and really exemplifies, yes, we have an urge to learn. We want to learn. We want to do the best we can for our children, for the students in our class, for our patients that we're providing for in our care settings. However, oftentimes every stakeholder involved in that care process has very, very limited time and very, very limited cognitive energy and space to be learning a lot of new tools and practices and theories. And there's a lot to understand about child psychology. And so we can't have the expectation that everyone become an expert in every type of skill, in every type of intervention. However, we do want to expose many different types of tools and many different types of intervention in the format that can be like a one page of a book. And so that form factor, that story, I think really exemplifies why we turn Sprout into something like a one pager. And so now I'm going to go over what is Sprout? What does it look like? You saw a picture on that other slide. I've kind of been holding it up now next to me. Sprout is a 50 card evidence-based toolkit that is physical. You have it in your hands. However, you can also scan each of the QR codes on any of the tools, which brings you to a landing page. You can scan the QR code on this screen right now to see the Listum landing page if you're interested in that. And essentially what each of these tools provide is an actionable tool or script that someone could implement that day or that moment. And we've also provided a few different ways to find which tools might be the best fit for you. I've used the word personalized or tailored a couple times through this talk, and we're going to get there in a future learning objective in this presentation here of how you can find in a 50 card deck of many different tools, of many different styles, maybe one, maybe two, maybe three tools that are the best fit for you and your specific challenges. And by you, I mean you with your work with the kiddos that you might be exposed to, whether that's in a care setting, whether that's in an educational setting, or whether that's at home. We really wanted to make them applicable in for a variety of stakeholders. And so the construction here of how you can break it down, we have an example script on each of these tools. Some of these tools are more of an activity. And so it might not always be a script example. It might be a setup example as well. And then we have a simple why it works. Each of these example scripts and the why it works are written at a 6th grade reading level to try and make sure they're as accessible as possible for a variety of stakeholders, whether it's the teacher or the learner of these tools. They're meant to be very accessible. The visual cues on the front of each of the card also are meant to make sure that even if you're using it with or without the child, that they can feel like it's something also for them. They can see the tool happening. And there are different ways to expose this or teach this new practice, whether it's through a script, whether it's through explaining why it works, or showing a picture of it. So now let's get into some real world examples. That was me kind of just setting the scene for how you might use some of the different ways to sort these different tools or these different practices. But let's talk a little bit about how we're seeing it already being used outside of our research settings, outside of directly following up from screenings. So this is actually a story from one of the direct interns at Biobe, who's also a babysitter of a 7-year-old who was using this tool and trying it out with them to help teach some practices, but also explore how the child responded when they were seeing the cards directly. I really love this story. Starters. And I'm seeing them frozen. Alrighty, am I back? I'm seeing I might have gotten offline for a moment. Okay, Nina, I'm seeing you nodding here. Okay, thanks so much. All right. So as I was saying, I think this story really exemplifies how these tools can be used as conversation starters. That's a theme that I see also at NAMI Vermont really often, which is all about ending the silence. Even when I'm even yesterday at Champlain College, talking to a class about the Sprout tools and sharing more about how we're trying to use them to explain language or how to introduce psychoeducational concepts. A lot of them were sharing, wow, this would have helped me start conversations with my parents or reframe what depression is or understand what anxiety is. And so even if the tools aren't always used perfectly, because there's no perfect way to implement these interventions, if they're only used to start conversations and dialogues, that's also part of our mission too. And so I just thought I'd share this story and kind of exemplify that there's no wrong way or right way or perfect way. The biggest goal is connection and trying tools together and exploring coping mechanisms that might be a fit. We've also been hearing from a variety of social workers and pediatricians and parents how they've been using them differently. Our goal is to make sure that it sounds like it's talking to a professional and these are evidence-based and have been organized and co-designed by professionals, but that they're playful and that they're fun and that it feels like something that anyone could have access to. That's something I really like also about ending the silence talks with NAMI at elementary schools, making sure it feels playful, making sure mental health doesn't feel scary to talk about, that it feels like something that everyone experiences and that we just have to work through. That's one aspect of sharing coping skills and sharing toolkits that I think is really, really valuable and that I think we could do more of and that I think we've had a really great time of at Biobe. Another thing I really like to see is pictures of how different families are using them in practice and how these tools can help create bonds through different activities that you might want to do at home. For example, there's a card called Code Word. And so this allows you to set up a code word for when you're feeling like you might need to take space or might need to take some one-on-one time with that caregiver. Having a code word or having a secret phrase or having a secret movement or activity or something that you do, it can create more bonds. Just like Graph-It can create moments where you're writing out how you felt through the day or graphing out how this scary moment compared to moments that were less scary to help articulate how emotional processing might require different skills at different times. And so that's been something that's been really awesome as well through this journey, translating Sprout from something in research settings to something we're seeing everyday families using. Okay, I'm going to go to this next one here. So another thing that I think has been really fun, and that I'd be curious if anyone here that's listening is also a part of an organization that are open to exploring workshops. We had no intention of originally doing workshops when we released Sprout, but something we heard of from some of our partner at Essex Pediatrics was they were using them in session with some of their parents and providing them to parents following sessions, but they wanted to be able to expose more parents to it outside of sessions and have it be something more self-taught. And so we recruited a few sets of workshops for a Sprout at home and a Sprout together sessions to kind of demo what does this look like in a community-based kind of peer education model. And it was really interesting to see parents talking through the strategies, sharing coping skills that they felt would be helpful. These were direct quotes of some things they shared in the follow-up of what they liked about being exposed to the Sprout Toolkit, which I thought was really amazing to see and a learning opportunity for us for how we can continue to evolve not only on our translation side, but on our research side, different ways to introduce these tools, not only in a physical format, but also in digital training formats as well. As I mentioned, we not only recruited caregivers, we also recruited clinicians and educators to understand more about what aspects of Sprout was most helpful for them. Again, a lot of our team, our co-founding team, translated these tools from academia. And so a lot of us are very science-minded, and a lot of the big questions that we have are, how is this helping? How can we do better? What are the ways that this is making the biggest difference for you? And one thing that we thought was very interesting was a lot of these parents mentioned, and also educators and clinicians, the recommendations page. And so as I go into this next set of learning objectives, we're going to go into getting more hands-on with all of you. I know we've been listening for approximately the last 30 minutes or so to me kind of gathering at you, giving you background. And now is when I'd love to encourage all of you, if you have a phone or if you have a browser set up, you're going to need that in just a moment. So this is the Sprout recommendation tool. We didn't originally create this when we released Sprout. This is a little GIF of it. But essentially what we heard from parents, both on the research side, but also on our commercial side as we started deploying to more families, was that having a 50 card deck was kind of overwhelming. And so having a tool that could offer three specific strategies to start with, something they could go back to time and time again, that they could tag specific background with for their context. For example, this one that you just saw was someone inputting that they had low intensity concerns, specifically with internalizing feelings, and a specific tag of worries. And this produced three specific tools. This is our three strategy toolkit and is free to use as many times as you want, even if you don't have a deck. This is something we're really excited to continue to share with different individuals. And so now I encourage you to think back to a child you have in your life, whether you're a babysitter, whether you're a parent, whether you're an aunt or an uncle, or even think back to maybe you're a teacher and it's someone in your classroom, or it's someone that or it's yourself from when you were a child. I encourage you to go through this recommender and explore some of the tools. You can also feel free to bookmark this recommender. We've seen some clinicians kind of save it as a screen, a little tab on their home screen. And you can feel free to come back to this recommender as many times as you want, with as many different contexts as you want. It will always be available. And you'll notice that it has information about learning more about the deck or learning more about the skill, and you don't immediately have access to the script. If you just scan that QR code on any of those three cards that pop up, you'll access that landing page, which has all of the information on the card. And so even if you have some challenges financially at this time and you're not able to access a deck, one, always feel free to email us. We do have different partnership programs for that, but also you can feel free to use this free recommender at no cost. So I'm going to keep moving forward, but I'll also share a link to this recommender in the chat in just a few minutes. And this is at sprout.biobe.org as I go to the next slide if you miss it. So I'm just going to keep moving forward here. So as you explore this on your phone, I encourage you, feel free to explore the recommender as I keep going. Now I'm just going to be sharing a little bit more on the what's next. Biobe, in the beginning of this chat, or our team in the beginning of this chat, you heard us building a wearable enabled screener that could improve sensitivity of early child and mental health screening. But then I spent the second half of this chat sharing more about our evidence-based toolkit. So now I'm going to take us into the future for where are we going next? How are we continuing to try and solve problems or try and address this space that we're really passionate about? And if we go to the left side of this image, I'd love to share, essentially, this is the vision. What we'd like to see in the future is, instead of only focusing on caregiver report or our wait and see approach for kiddos under 10, we'd love to see that caregiver reporting paired with an objective screening, whether that takes 5 to 10 minutes in a clinic or that's done in an educational setting. We're still learning more about how to best introduce this kind of behavioral assessment into standard of care. However, we know that by using this assessment, we can identify 3 to 4 times more children. Identification in the earliest years is the best thing we can do. And so a lot of those logistics of where is it going to be? How can we make sure it's scalable? That's what my team is working on now as we begin the regulatory process, continue to recruit more children to make our models more robust. But that is the future we see, a future where we don't just rely on parent report, but we also give that child voice as well in their annual well visit for how their body is responding to stress and reactivity, so that we can provide them support and personalized skills for coping that aren't necessarily immediately about medication or immediately about getting into a wait list or follow-up care. Sometimes it looks like just getting resources at home and having something that can provide you personalized resources as you continue to learn and as you continue to share what works and what doesn't work. We've also continued to understand more in our research side to make this the most effective for families. Not only do you need a 3-card recommender for where to start, but also tuning that recommendation system to make sure families get exactly the coping skills or exactly the types of interventions they might be most open to is going to make it all the more effective. So, for example, someone who has different mental health literacy and different behavioral patterns for how they communicate with their child or the age of that child may dictate what strategy they feel most open or confident to use or to try at home. If we can offer them a strategy they're more open and confident to try, that's really the end goal. So, moving from there, we've already released Sprout. We're continuing to study it in research settings, and we're continuing to deploy it in a low-cost format to make sure that we're not only having it available in our research context, but we're also partnering with clinics and community partners to continue to develop that toolkit and make sure it's as accessible as possible. But we also have a digital platform that we're developing and is in alpha format right now. And we're going back and forth with more co-design at this stage with clinicians. And what this platform looks like is essentially taking what you've learned in the Sprout Foundation stack and building it into a platform where then you can track over time what's working and what's not. If every week you've tried one strategy and on all the weeks the body tools are the ones that are working, whereas behavioral activation or the psychoeducational tools are working less so, that is really important information for triage and for understanding what might work best next. And that's really the value that our Sprout Connect platform that we're developing, both on the research side and partnering with different groups, but also trying to make sure it's accessible on the translation side. That's what's coming next for us. But of course, we're also still continuing to develop Oak. This is our big technology that we've been developing since 2011. We feel that this could really change the standard of care and allow us to identify many more children early on and provide more intervention early on. And we hope that builds literacy. We hope that builds comfort. And we know that can help build longer term coping skills that can help prevent challenges they might experience later in life if they've never been exposed to appropriate mental health intervention earlier on in their life. And so what our biggest goal is long-term positive change for these kiddos. So I am here representing a large team in academia, but also on our translation side that is working to make these tools more accessible, that is working to make sure that we're doing our best to help ameliorate the concerns in the mental health crisis, to help make screening and intervention more personalized, more intelligent, but also more playful and more comfortable, and something that parents, educators, and clinicians feel comfortable using every day. This is some members of our team, and I would not be here today without them. And they are so valuable for what we do and the ideas that we bring next. Thank you all so much for listening. We have a good 15-20 minutes now for Q&A, for back and forth, for trying out the 3-card recommender. I'm also going to be sharing some links in the chat right now, as well as some PDF guides that are going to be used as follow-up resources, which was one of those learning objectives that we shared in advance. And you can feel free to scan this QR code if you're curious to learn more about Biobe, but also if you're curious to learn more about the other research that I individually or I as a team am involved in. We do really, really awesome work at the Complex Systems Institute. And if you ever have any questions about Biobe or our work there, you can feel free to reach out to me directly at brynloftness@biobe.org. And I'll also be sharing some additional follow-up information in the chat. Thank you all so much for listening.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bryn. That was so informative. I loved learning more about Biobe and everything that you all are doing. So as Bryn said, we have some time remaining for Q&A. We have about 15 or 20 minutes, so lots of time for some great discussion. If anyone has any questions, please either pop them in the chat. Oh, thank you for that, Bryn. Bryn just put in the chat some links and some further information. And as she mentioned a moment ago and in this chat message, we are going to be sharing 4 PDFs to be shared or in the follow-up as well. So if you have any questions, we would love to address those at this time.
I have a question slash comment, Bryn. Hi, it's Kathleen from NAMI. Um, so I love the visuals on your card in addition to language, because as we know, young children often don't have language. But the other thing that comes to mind, selfishly, is I am the parent of a child who chronologically is much older, but developmentally is younger.
Mm.
And when he is frustrated, language is his first thing that goes, right? Like the first thing that's not as accessible to him. And so I just wanted to comment that while there's likely recommended age levels or whatever, it would seem to me that this tool would be really appropriate even for a student who's older. And while the pictures are young, I think, as you said, you're teaching the parents and the providers as much as you're teaching the student at the same time. So I love that parallel learning as an educator myself and as a parent myself. I love that parallel learning that you're doing both at the same time. So yes, I probably can't wait till the auction to bid on those. I'm gonna have to buy some before that now and let somebody else bid on those at the auction. So I just wanted to say thank you and that I see a lot of, as an educator, see a lot of ways these can be used.
Mm. Kathleen, that's great feedback. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts there. And yes, that's one aspect we love about these decks and about this tool in general is the opportunity for co-learning and for really integrating that into our everyday practice without it feeling like a co-learning experience, without it feeling like you're in
Super
class.
authentic,
Related.
right? Like
Yes.
it's in the moment authentic.
Yeah.
And we all want something we can use tomorrow, right? We want to address it right away. So really, really love that. And I will be sharing them in the basics class that we teach here at NAMI, definitely as a resource.
Lovely. Thanks so much for your thoughts, Kathleen. Any other questions or comments or thoughts? Oh, I see a question in the chat from Chloe, just wondering more about wearables and how they can be used. For context, I'm a parent of young children. Oh, great question, Chloe. So there are a variety of wearables available currently for young children, but actually not that many. And that's part of the problem of this space for pediatric wearables that I'm very passionate about. A lot of wearables are made for adults and then adapted for children. That's part of the reason our team is so passionate about trying to take a new angle. We partner with a team called Cybele. They primarily use research grade wearables. Here, I'll even put something in the chat so you can look that up if you're curious about those adhesives. We're now working with them to try and adapt their research grade wearable for pediatric commercial opportunities because we understand kids' wrists don't work like adults' wrists in that they just kind of wiggle around. And it's harder to get that signal that we need. And so our team works more with adhesive based sensors, think like smart sticker style, that we've found a lot more success with. But I'm curious, Chloe, for you to continue to watch this space in the future. I think in the next 5 years, we're really going to see a lot of changes within pediatric behavioral health wearables and how we can use them to understand more about tantrums. That's something our team studies a lot of, about reactivity, about early symptom identification, but also just about everyday well-being. It's hard to know what's happening in the life of a child, if they're sleeping, if they're getting activity. And so I hope that wearables also create more opportunities for conversation as well. Yeah. Any other questions? No bad questions.
I
I,
actually, oh, go ahead, Lori.
no, you can go ahead, Christina. I'll go next.
Okay, thanks. So, a question that came up for me, Bryn, as a former educator myself, I'm wondering if you have seen educators in the elementary space or maybe even preschool using the Foundations card sets in whole class activities, not necessarily one-on-one, or if they're doing a combination or maybe small groups. I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, this is a great question. So in short, not yet. And part of that is because we're still making a lot of entry points. So far, we've been able to gain connections to a lot of counselors, and we've been hearing a lot of success of seeing it in small group settings or one-on-one settings for school counselors in educational contexts. However, we'd love to see more examples and be able to explore more examples of how they could be used in activities in full classroom context. And I think we have more to learn there of how they can be effective, especially for peer learning opportunities.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
I love these cards, Bryn, and I really appreciate your explanation of all the work you've done. And, as a researcher, I'm sure you're thinking of what's the next thing you'll be doing.
Mhm.
Do you have anything in the works?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it kind of goes back to Chloe's question. I think making psychoeducational data more accessible and psychoeducational tools more accessible is part of what I'm really interested in and fascinated about. But I truly believe wearables and making everyday wearables more accessible for families and the data from it more accessible for families is the future I want to help cultivate and is the future I want to make more accessible. And so by continuing to build wearables for children for behavioral health and making contexts that are based on what families want, that's what I'd really like to continue to work on. And that's what our team is really looking forward to continuing to work on beyond just OAK and our behavioral assessment, but more at-home monitoring for like I said before, creating conversations in care.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah. Judy, I love your thoughts there, and I would love to talk more about that, or if there's any ideas that the team has. Our biggest challenge, I would say, right now is we have a lot of momentum and we have great tools, and we just need to reach more people now. And that's part of our team's goal now is just telling people, here's what we built, here's the success we're seeing so far, here's where we're still learning and want feedback to tune and making sure that we're now just putting it out there. That's our biggest goal. And so if there's any ideas of how we can make those entry points, that's exactly our number one goal.
Yeah, I think we can definitely, from the basics class, give some feedback or at least share it with them. The other thing I'm wondering about, and you may have already done this, and it's specific to Vermont, but like we have a DA system for mental health for adults, we have parent-child centers, and a network in Vermont. And so I'm just wondering if you've shared this with the 16 parent-child centers, the
Mm.
PCCs.
Not yet. Like I said before, we only just released this out of our research settings in September. And
Oh, so it's
so
pretty new. Yeah.
oh, it's quite well, it's new in outside of the
Right.
research
In the
settings. And so
public sector. Yeah.
in the public sector, exactly. But that is exactly the types of spaces that we're really trying to make introductions within or want to
You say,
understand.
do you need some warm handoffs? Are those
Yes,
helpful?
that
Yeah,
would be
we can talk
so
more
helpful.
offline, but
Yes,
principal
exactly.
in Vermont for 28 years. We got a lot of entries into schools for you. Yeah.
That would be so great. That would be so great. And that's really our biggest goal right now is to find individuals also trying to support and make change in this space. And then finding chances for partnerships, finding ways that we can build opportunities for learning, opportunities for growth. And so that's great.
Like the Vermont School Counselors Association right now has proposals out for tabling and for presentations, and we are attending. So that would be a great space for you guys. That's like 250 to 300 school counselors all in one space for 2 days. It's a
Yeah.
really there's a fee for tabling, but it's really reasonable.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I would love, we should just go get tea and I need to bring my notebook to write all these ideas down.
I will send you an email with some talking points, and we should have tea. I'd love that. Thanks.
Ah, amazing. Is there any other questions or thoughts or ideas? There's no bad questions, no bad thoughts. I know we went over some pretty heavy technical details and then some pretty not so heavy technical details. And so whether it's the technical or non-technical, whatever the questions are, they're all welcome.
Do you think at any point this will scale up in the sense of, I shouldn't use really scale up, but be adapted? I know the intent is for young children, and the earlier you get in, the better. And I agree completely. Like research is very clear about that. And I have a curiosity about a lot of the youth I have worked with have been, teenagers or kids at Job Corps or kids that just didn't have those tools or skills modeled or taught or had an opportunity to practice them. And they may find the current graphics young. So I'm
Mhm.
just wondering, is there a phase two or a 2.0 that's like, how about the not adult, but the teen version of this for kids who just missed it? And I know you're doing it in parallel with the adults, so that's cool. But I'm just wondering about the teen or the even the adult who might have multi-complex traumas or issues facing them from addiction to other things. And a lot of these tools and the cards that I've seen, I've not done the whole thing, but I have reviewed it some, are just good self-regulation skills, they're good coping skills, they're good communication skills. They ask you to pause and notice. Like they're good life skills, right? And so I understand your target audience is youth, and I understand why. And I think there would be, I know an awful lot of teens and adults, right? Is there going to be like a marriage counseling version? I think that's what I'm asking. Just kidding. No, but seriously, in terms of communicating and self-regulation, and like there are some of us that just didn't get all those opportunities. So is there a
Yeah.
2.0 or 3.0 down the road, maybe?
Kathleen, I love these questions. So our first 2.0 that we're working on now and actually should be available in the next couple months is we're working with a team of translators to make Sprout in Spanish. And so that will be the first 2.0 available is Sprout in Spanish. Um,
Fantastic.
we're really, really excited about that. That'll be coming really shortly. We're getting close there. And the next ones after that, we actually have, I love Jenny, your thought here too, and I'd love to bring it up because I think it fits right in line with Kathleen's, is we've actually talked to some teams about the other end of life, in that elder care or dementia care where they're also trying to teach these skills. So we've talked to some teams there for adapting this kind of learning, this flashcard style learning for evidence-based skills, as something that could be a nice platform. But then going back to kids, you're absolutely right. It's very applicable for adolescents. A lot of these tools, they aren't just for children, they're for everyone. And so making sure that the form factor is something they feel accessible with, it's something they're confident in. We know that digital tools tend to be more appealing for those age groups. And so we currently have an app that's in development that we're continuing to build further on that is going to allow them to track what tools, get reminder on the tools, things like that. We also have a partnership that's currently being developed with a team called Zero to Thrive, which is actually looking younger than what we currently serve. It's for 0 to 5-year-olds, that we're currently trying to integrate our tools with as well. So we're looking at a variety of different age spectrums because we've learned that this form factor seems to be helpful. And we want to continue pursuing how else can we do these easy educational opportunities in our same area of psychoeducational tools and biobehavioral technology. So I love those questions.
You have another great question in the chat. Do you know if libraries carry these card decks? What a good idea.
Chloe, this is a great question. We have been starting to reach out to libraries. We have an individual that works with us part-time out in Maine who's been trying to do some more stakeholder discovery with libraries out there to understand what their needs are, if their parents that they're serving are often asking for this, if they work with any educators asking for these kinds of themes. And so that is an area that we're looking to explore more, especially for families that might not want to buy a deck or might feel more comfortable just getting a few tools in a given week with the book that they're already checking out.
I also wonder about DCF and the system that has already sort of established families who would benefit from more support or kids who would benefit. We all benefit from learning new tools. But I feel like you're doing both things. You're doing preventative work, but you're also doing in the moment mediation work.
Mhm.
And in my experience, DCF isn't always preventative, it's often reactionary. And so how fun would it be to get them to have a tool in their hand that's both preventative and responsive?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just brainstorming now, and I'm just like a think tank. My head's spinning of
Yeah,
things
yes.
could be used. So yeah.
I
DCF,
love
I
those thoughts,
wonder.
Kathleen. I love those thoughts. And I'm so excited to continue following up on these ideas. And if anyone else has ideas, even after this chat or this presentation, as I put in my little blurb in the chat, my email is there directly. You can reach out at any time. And it doesn't have to be formal. It can be like, hey, Bryn, had this idea. Have a great day. Like it's whatever feels right. If you have an idea, our biggest goal right now is, like I said before, just trying to reach people, saying this is what we've learned, hearing what we need to continue to learn and continue to build. And so I just appreciate all the ideas so far, and any ideas anyone feels willing to share later on as well. Always feel open to reach out. And if you work for an organization or you're attached to an organization or you know an organization that you think might benefit, we love warm handoffs too. Those are always great ways for us to meet people and share our tools.
That's so great. Thank you, Bryn. I'm conscious of the time. We just have a few minutes left, so I think we could probably take one more question before we close for the afternoon.
Hi. Hi, I was just thinking, I am here because I work at a community justice center, and we work with a lot of people who have missed those skills in their early years. And so our role here is for people that are reintegrating into society, have come out of incarceration, and have been there for decades, right? Decades. And so they don't have those skills, and we kind of have to start at that elementary level in
Mhm.
reintegration, and I just think that it's a really helpful tool for those individuals as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that feedback. And if you ever have additional ideas you'd like to share of this is how it could be very helpful, even if you don't think we're working on it yet, if you ever are like, this is what we need, we always love to hear that kind of feedback, especially for the kind of work you're doing that is so important for making sure people have the opportunity to have their chance for long-term success. Thanks so much for that work and for that feedback.
Awesome. Well,
Fantastic.
thank you all so much for joining us, and a huge thank you to Bryn for sharing her expertise and her time with us this afternoon. As a friendly reminder, we ask that all of you complete our evaluation. We really value your feedback, and please keep an eye out for a follow-up email. It's going to have those resources that Bryn mentioned, as well as contact information and lots of good stuff. And we hope to see you at a future Lunch and Learn as well. We've got several more coming up over the next few months. So thank you so much again, Bryn, and thank you all for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
You too.